So part of my personal style is taking ideas and mushing them together. So I loved Jen's fabric tape that she made. I thought it was totally brilliant. And frankly, if I can brag for a moment, I loved my idea of doodling on book pages. And I tried to think about how I could sort of mush those ideas together to make something new, some kind of new ingredient. And if you look at this tag, what you'll see here, this is a continuation of Jen's tag book. What I did is I took her fabric tape, I added some pattern paper, we did a little bit of watercolor painting, and then back here, this is actually a stencil that I traced in order to create the similar book page that you can see on this scrapbook page right here. It's the same idea of the embellishment. And there are lots of different stencils you can use. I happen to have two with me right now, which is, this is a feather design. And then I thought this was fun because this is the United States. It's a map. And if you were going to travel somewhere, something like that, I have a bunch of little states cut out here. If you're going to Texas or Ohio, California, Florida, it could be a great way, especially for pocket scrapbooking or something like that, an easy embellishment. But if you don't feel like using a stencil and you don't feel like doodling, what about using a stamp? Now, let's talk about what kind of stamp works best. So you can see here, I have a design that has a lot of large open areas. And that is the thing that's gonna work best for this technique. And it also has a nice closed area as well. Now for paper, you could use the book pages that we have been using, but you know what? They also make pattern paper that looks like book pages, which is very cool. I also wanna share my little thrifty tip here, which is I didn't have a stamping block with me, but I did have a CD case, and it's easy enough to use it in a pinch instead of getting an acrylic stamping block. So I'm gonna take my ink and I'm just gonna go ahead and ink up the stamp. And when you're working with a large stamp, I find it much better to push the ink pad onto the stamp rather than to put the stamp onto the ink pad. So now that I have this, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to stamp it. And I'm just gonna push just like I would with an acrylic block. Generally, when you're using a large stamp like this, you want to make sure that you push your hand sort of all over in every area. And there you go. There's my beautiful image, nice and easy. So now I'm ready to do some coloring. And I just brought in my markers and we're gonna play with a little bit of blending. So again, you do wanna use an ink that is not going to run when it comes in contact with your whatever markers or wet medium you may be using. So just make sure that you use something permanent. So now I'm gonna go in here with the side of my brush tip markers, always using the side. And I think this would be a great embellishment for a scrapbook page or something like that. It would be easy to put it on the front of a card. I like all those kinds of things. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna keep adding some colors. And I love the way that, again, the scrapbook paper is showing through that, you know, that marker, because this is not an opaque marker, it's a translucent marker that really gives that watercolor effect. And there are so many hand-drawn looking stamps around these days that you really don't have to be able to draw, because you can get the look just by doing it like this. And actually, if you think about it, if you're interested in getting into art journaling or any of the other alternatives to scrapbooking, or other kind of, not alternatives, but adjacent crafts, this is a great way to get started drawing, because once you get comfortable with images like these, you will start to find that you want to make your own. Now, I don't care if I go over the edges at all, because I'm going to cut these out. And I also don't care, again, if I go over the ink, but I love making things multiple colors. And again, think about using watercolor, think about using crayon, think about using all sorts of stuff you probably have sitting around in your stash. Do you think it's weird to add blue once we've done all these warm colors? You know what? I was born a weird girl and I'm probably gonna die a weird girl. So I'm just gonna continue to add the colors. And then I'm gonna take this yellow and kind of use it a little bit to blend some things out. Just going over everything. You could airbrush, you could paint, you could do whatever you wanted. And now it's time to cut it out to create that embellishment. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut out a smaller piece of paper, because that's a lot easier for me to handle rather than a larger piece of paper. And once I have it, I am actually gonna cut this, I think I'm gonna cut it right on that black line. That's a thick enough line that I can do that. And with hand cutting, you wanna make sure that you're never turning the scissors. I'm actually feeding the paper into the scissors as I go around here. And that is helping me to have a nice smooth line. Notice that I also never close those blades. And once you have it all cut out, it'll be a perfect embellishment, kind of like this one, ready to go right on your head or anywhere else that you can find.